So in chapter 10, we learned about how monopoly is one end of the extreme of market power, perfect competition is the other end of the extreme in market power, and somewhere in the middle exists this monopolistic competitive firm. Who enjoys some price setting power in that they have a downward sloping demand curve, but nowhere near the amount that monopolists have. And so just as with before, we're going to set Q star equal to where my marginal revenue is equal to my marginal cost. So I'm going to find my marginal revenue, the blue line, and my marginal cost, the purple line. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, just like before, drop an anchor to find my Q star. Just like in Monopoly, we're going to want to label this as something, but it's nothing. So we don't. We catch ourselves. We go up, 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 up until we get to the demand curve, because that's actually telling us how much people are willing to pay, and we find our P star. Once we're here, again, we're going to use our average total cost. To find our profit rectangle. So the profit rectangle is going to be this orange thing between the price and the average total cost. Now, monopolistically competitive firms don't have the advantages that monopolies do, right? They don't have these high barriers to entry. And so monopolistically competitive firms compete through advertising and other types of non-price competition. And because of the free entry and exit that happens in monopolistically competitive firms, this profit here is going to be short-lived. Why is it going to be short-lived? Well, other firms seeing this and lacking the barriers to entry that monopolists have, they're going to do what? They're going to enter the industry. And whenever we enter the industry, that's going to result in new demand and marginal revenue curves. So these new demand and marginal revenue curves, they're going to decrease slightly, but then there's still going to be some profits, right? And then they might decrease a lot. Let's take a look at the situation if they decreased by this much. So if they decreased by this much and we had marginal revenue 2 and demand 2 here, then we would end up with a Q star 2, Q double star. And then again, we would go up to the demand curve and find the P star. Now here, we can't go down to the average total cost curve because the demand curve has shifted so much that it's below our average total costs. So what we actually have to do is we have to go up until we get to this point, and then this whole thing would actually be a loss rectangle. So because of this shift, now the firm went from making a short-lived abnormal economic profit to a loss. And that's because of the fact that my average total cost here at Q double star is above the price double star. So what's actually going to happen? So there's going to be this kind of oscillation, right, back and forth. There's going to be abnormal profits. Firms are going to enter the industry, which is going to drive the price down, which is going to drive the demand curves down. Then the demand curve is going to get driven too much, right? And then all of a sudden, the profit maximizing choice of the monopolistically competitive firms is to produce a Q double star. But given our cost structure, Q double star is going to result in a loss, right? So then those firms that are producing at a loss are going to leave the industry, which is going to bring this demand curve back up, right? So let's go ahead and get rid of this shift. What's eventually going to happen is there's going to be movement, and then, okay, there's still profit. Then there'll be too much movement. Oh, there's a loss. Then people are going to leave the industry, and then we're going to get to this point right here. Well, maybe. See if I can. I didn't draw this very well here. But ideally, we should be getting to a point where, so I'm going to have to kind of fudge things a little bit. I apologize. Ungroup. So this thing. Let's get rid of this. So we're going to get to a point where at the new marginal revenue curve, we are exactly tangent, and I know I didn't do a very good job. Okay, let's start over with a new graph, since this one is not doing great, because I just want to go to the long-term equilibrium. So the long-term equilibrium is looking something like this, where the marginal revenue equals the marginal cost at some Q star, that then when we go up to the demand curve is exactly tangent to the average total cost. So this is going to tell us that the price that we get, our P star, is going to be exactly the same as my average total cost at Q star. And we know that average profit is going to be 0 when P star is equal to average total cost, because average profit is nothing more than the difference between average total cost and P star. And so this is going to end up being our long-run equilibrium for monopolistically competitive firms. So people are going to enter, which is going to shift the demand curve, and that shift is going to overreact, and then people are going to leave, and then it's going to shift back up, and then people are going to come in, and then it's going to shift down until we get to this equilibrium where firms are making 0, not profits, right? They're still making positive accounting profits, but 0 economic profits. So remember, when we're talking about economic profits, we're talking about they're recouping their lost time, they're recouping the foregone interest on any capital that they have invested into the company. Questions on monopolistic competition and the dynamics of the demand curve adjusting. It's very similar to the dynamics that are happening in perfectly competitive land, but there's a slight complication because of the downward sloping demand curve and the downward sloping marginal revenue curve, and the fact that, you know, finding that profit maximizing quantity doesn't correspond to a price, right? We're all going to make that mistake, but we just have to catch ourselves and always realize that just because we're setting the quantity where the marginal revenue equals the marginal cost does not mean we set the price where the marginal revenue equals the marginal cost. We're always going to go up to the demand curve to find the actual willingness to pay of the consumers given a certain quantity that's provided.